Okay, hope you enjoyed your break. That was a commercial break for Adam Hats. The module session is not sponsored by Adam Hats. I don't think the company exists anymore. It has been a slightly longer break for me because the computer crashed and I'm now on a different day recording this. So the second part of this lecture will be an introduction to reflexivity and reflective practice, sometimes known as reflexive practice. Reflexivity, and reflective practice are essential attributes, components, requirements of education good practice. So it's a really important principle in education that we are critically reflective practitioners. We can only really touch on it here, so it's very important that you engage in some reading. I'm not going to explain any of the models of reflective practice. There are quite a few, for example, Gibbs, Rolfe et al., Sean or Schön, as it's sometimes pronounced, Kolb, Honey and Mumford cycle. There are Brookfield's lenses. There are quite a few. I'm put a link here to the skills team sources on here and also to a book to read. Really important that you do engage with this material about critically reflective practice. It's an important part of somebody who is classified as a studier of the field of education. So what is reflective practice essentially? It's about looking at things or thinking about things, events, experiences, how we do things, our practices, and also theories from different perspectives. And it can be both simple and complex. We can have very surface levels of reflection or very deep levels of reflection. So on a very surface level, I could look at something I'd done and thought, oh, that didn't go very well, so what? Or I could look at it on a deeper level and say, oh, that didn't go very well. Why didn't it go very well? Was it because I did something not as well as I could have done? What will I do next time to do it better? Or could I look at it at an even deeper level and say, well, why didn't it go wrong? It was because I wasn't feeling very well that day. There was other things happening in my life, etc. Next time I'll make sure that I'm in a calm, relaxed mode. I'll practice and prepare more, and I'll do it then. So lots of different levels of reflection. And a lot of the models of reflection are cycles of reflection, essentially requiring you to do something often, reflect on it, prepare for the next time you do it, and then take some action. Now, why do we do critical reflection in educational studies? Well, it allows us to make meaning from things. By that I mean personal meaning. It increases our depth and level of understanding of things. It allows us to use what we've learned in the past to inform our future, both our actions and our thoughts, and also to consider, very importantly, the real life implications of our thinking, which is really important in education because it's a theoretical discipline, but it's also a practical applied discipline. Most of us are involved in the field of education because we want to actually do something in the world that makes a positive impact or change on people's lives. Most of you will be teachers because obviously it's a job and you get paid for that job, but you do that because you want to make an impact on children's lives. So we need to consider the implications of our thinking. So, for example, if somebody comes up with a new idea about a better way to teach, how do we know that? Do we test it out? Reflection also allows us to incorporate new knowledge, new skills and new experiences into our existing worldview, which you might call our positionality. And reflection is essentially that linkage between thinking and doing. And it's an important part of what we call constructivist learning. Constructivist learning is where we learn things and integrate them and incorporate them into our existing corpus of knowledge, rather than just learning something by rote memory or memorizing it, which doesn't lead to actual understanding. What we are interested in is understanding. Now, for some people, critical reflection can be very easy. There is one of the Honey and Mumford's work postulates that there are 4 different types of persons. Some people are called reflectors, and they can reflect, or they take more easily or naturally to this idea, this practice of reflection or critical reflection. But for other people, it's a bit more difficult. I would say it's a skill which can be learned. The more you reflect, the easier it becomes, like many actual practical things in life. Although critical reflection isn't necessarily a practical skill, though it has practical applications, it's something we do up here in our heads, our brains, assuming one has one. Now, some types of reflection, we can categorize it, for example. Process reflection. We look at the process of something that we have done, or perhaps we're about to do, and we look at the process, step by step, what we've done. There's also inward-looking reflection, where I reflect about myself, on my own thoughts, my feelings, my values. How do I feel about something? Why do I believe that? Where has my belief come from? Do I feel anger towards this? Do I feel sadness? Am I interested in it? And there's an argument that we do inwards looking reflection almost as a normal and natural process, but by doing it in a formalized process as part of our learning, it helps us learn and develop. There's also outward looking reflection, where we look outside the world and try to reflect on how that has informed and shaped us. So, for example, for some of you international students, your understandings of education will have been shaped by how you were taught as a child, and then how you learnt at university. Well, not just for international students, actually, for most people. And it's interesting, because if you can, I feel sometimes when I talk with people outside of universities, because they haven't actually participated in university, sometimes their idea of university is quite different. So I can frequently talk to people outside university, and they will say, oh, my daughter's studying at such and such a university, and she's only getting 15 hours of lessons a week, or she's only getting 20 hours of lessons a week, or sometimes she's only getting 9 hours of lessons a week. You know, it's not very good value if they're paying all that money for it. And I usually say to them, well, we don't just learn when you're being taught by a lecturer. Most modules at every university are just purely somebody giving you some knowledge. Here's a bit of knowledge, you can have it. It's about the process that's associated with the learning, the reading, the reflection, the thinking through, the discussion with people. Backwards looking reflection. We look at what we have done in the past, either long distance or short distance or medium distance. What did I do? And then we think, did it work? Did it not work? Can I do it differently? How did it work or not work? We can also use what I call forwards looking reflection, where we think into the future and think, if I were to do this, what would the outcome be? What would happen to me, to others, etc.? And if you click on this link, you'll have to download it. There are 15 questions that encourage critical thinking. It's really important that you start getting into this idea, this mindset of critical thinking and critical reflection, because that will help you when you're writing your assignments. We also have critical reflection, where we reflect on some of the things we're reading. Do they make sense to us? Do I agree with what has been written? Do I agree or do I disagree? Why do I agree or not agree? Things like that. Some basic reflective questions then. We can, I know if any of you come across Rudyard Kipling's The Elephant. I keep 6 wise men, the names of who or what and why or when. We would use the word men nowadays, we use people. But some basic reflective questions are how. How did this happen? How does that work? How can I know something about this? Why? Why did that happen? Why do I know something about this? Why did somebody do that? Why did somebody not do that? When did this happen? What happened? What did I think about it? Or what did I not think about it? What did I do? Or what did I not do? What can I learn from this? What might I do differently next time? Now, I specifically use the word might there rather than will or may. Might is less strong than may, which is certainly less strong than will. So some people say, well, what will I do differently next time? But to me, reflection is, well, what might I do? I have options. What might I do? And then I could narrow it down to what will I actually do. It may be that I might be able to do 6 things differently, or do something differently 6 different ways, but I might then decide to only do them one way. So I will do them a certain way. So for example, simple example, if I'm cycling to work, I might have a choice of 6 different routes, 6 different roads or streets to go down. And I might say, well, I'll go down this one, it's a quicker one, but there's more traffic, so therefore it's more dangerous, perhaps. And then I might decide, well, I will do this because I want to go a longer route that's safer, perhaps. So that's a very basic example of reflection. Other basic reflective questions are, how do I know this? How do I know this? Now, that sounds like a silly one almost when you first encounter that. You say, well, I know it because I've learnt it. Somebody has taught it to me. I've read it. I've seen it on the news. I heard it on the grapevine, as the old Otis Redding song went. How do I know this, though? What we essentially mean with this is, how do I know it is, we can't say here it is true within the social world? What is the evidence for that? And that's really important, that you start to engage with the reading to inform. So we don't want uninformed opinions. We want you to know, how do I know this? What's the evidence I have? Or is there any evidence for it? For example, we know that smoking cigarettes is harmful for people. And we know that because there's lots of research being conducted in it. There will always be an outlier, an example of somebody who lives to the age of 90 who's smoked 20 a day since they were age of 15 perhaps, but they're an outlier. We know that smoking is dangerous for us, for example. What would somebody else think about this? This is linked in with our positionality, where we can think, well, how do I see this from somebody else's perspective, from somebody else's lens? How do I see it? Also, how do I think it? And it's a difficult one to do because we don't know what anybody else thinks. We can only know how we think, but we can ask people how they think about something. Two other questions, both whys. Why is this important? And why is this important to me? So it may be important for governments, for schools, ministers, students, learners, but why is it important to me personally? And it may be something that actually is important, but is not personally important to you. So I don't have any children at school. I don't have any children. I don't have any children in school. So when the government announces a new initiative that affects school children, it may be important nationally into schools, but it's not important to me. If I did have children, it may have school age, it may be important. Is there another perspective or another way of looking at this? So can I see this from a different position? What would somebody else say about this? What would an expert say about it? What would a layperson say about it? What would a child say about it? And very importantly, what sense can I make of this? And this is where reflection involves some cogitation, some rumination, some thought. And that you may not have that immediate answer straight away. You may have this process of cognitive dissonance, whereby you have two contradictory beliefs and you cannot accommodate them both at the same time. So you may believe something to be both true and false. And that's called, and you get a strange feeling called cognitive dissonance, where you think, well, I feel uncomfortable with that, I'm not sure. And sometimes reflection, we just have to wait and see when we can resolve it with ourselves. And then what are the implications? What are the implications for me and for other people? So those are some basic reflective questions to get you started on this process of personal reflection and critical reflection. Post-session, I want you to think about, who are you? You know who you are, I hope. Who are you and what affects your positionality? So I want you to spend some time reflecting on you, yourself, what affects you and your positionality. So how might your personal biography affect you? So, and your identity. So do you call yourself a teacher? If you are Nigerian, do you call yourself an African or a Nigerian? Do you call yourself if you're a parent, a father, say, do you call yourself a father? If you're an educated person, do you say, well, I possess a degree? So how does your personal biography affect you? How does your professional experiences influence you? So here we've got influence rather than affect you. How have your work and career so far affected your beliefs? So if you've been working in a school and what you've seen happen in the school, that may have, or certainly will have, influenced your positionality about how things should be in a school or how things should not be in a school. Think also about values and principles. Where do your personal values and principles come from? What underpin them? Do they come from religious backgrounds, upbringing, or from your parents, or from experiences you've had when you were younger, and also are they informed by experiences you're still having today? And very importantly, What conceptual or theoretical ideas influence you? So this may be political ideas, they may be ideas about education, there may be ideas about educational theory, there may be ideas about what is right or wrong and how they. So try engaging in as much reading as possible about educational theory. It will just really help you to and read as many papers as you can. It will really help you to get an understanding of where your own positionality is in regard to different situations. And it's certainly the case that, as I said in the first part of the lecture, when you put a different hat on, you will see things from a different perspective. So something in a school involving a child, somebody who puts their parent hat on will see it differently from somebody who puts their teacher hat on. We'll see it differently perhaps from somebody who puts their health and safety hat on. We'll see it differently perhaps from somebody who puts their financial accountability hat on. We're nearly at the end of the second part of the lecture. I want you also to get this book from the University Library, Beginning Reflective Practice by Melanie Jasper. It's aimed primarily at nurses, but nurses use a lot of reflective practice in their work. And if you can, please read chapter 1 and chapter 3. If you have the time, you could also read chapter 2. But each of those chapters has some reflective activity exercises, and it's a really well written book, very accessible. And you may wish to make some notes on this for yourself about the different reflective views and how to do things. And hopefully, if you've never engaged in critical reflection before, personal reflection, it will be quite an interesting process for you. May not necessarily be an enjoyable process the first time, but it will be an interesting process. So if there's time you may not have actually been able to do much critical reflection by the time of your workshop seminars on the Tuesday, but if you have, it'd be interesting to discuss these perhaps. And finally, the last slide, I would like you to look at some of the skills team materials. You go into the library or just search University of Hull skills team, and then you will find a link to reflective theories. I'd like you to read the ones by Sean or Schön, by Brookfield, by Gibbs, by Rolfe et al, and by Kolb. Don't worry about the era one. It's not. I'm never really impressed with the era one. It's a bit of a basic. Yeah, well, I won't. That's my view of the era one. I'm not too impressed with it. You may wish to read it and think, oh, this is a really good one. We have plurality of views in education. There are no right and wrong. Other people may think the era model is the best thing since sliced bread, as we say in the UK. So read Sean or Schön, Brookfield, Gibbs, and Rolfe. If you want, make some notes about those. Think about, could I use these as models for personal and professional development? So, hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you, and enjoy your learning.